shadowed corners of ancient Alexandria, amidst the fragrant wafts of incense and the hushed whispers of scholars, the true essence of alchemy was born, not as a mere quest for gold, but as a divine pursuit of the human spirit's exaltation. Alchemy, far from the mere transmutation of base metals into precious gold, embodies the profound metamorphosis of the human spirit. It is the sacred act of elevating man's essence from the mundane to the sublime, forging an ascent from the corporeal to the divine, from the profane to the numinous. In the sacred texts of the Hermes Trismegistus, the Hermetic traditions unveiled the mysteries of the cosmos and the human soul, guiding seekers through a labyrinthine journey of self-discovery and spiritual purification. Through this arcane journey, the alchemist seeks not material wealth, but the quintessence of enlightenment, transmuting the leaden aspects of the human nature into the purest gold of higher consciousness. The enigmatic figure of Paracelsus, wandering through the courts of Renaissance Europe, exemplified this sacred quest. He delved deep into the hidden secrets of nature, not merely to concoct elixirs and potions, but to unveil the hidden truths of existence and the divine potential within man. As Paracelsus illuminated, the Philosopher's Stone was not a literal rock, but a metaphor for attainment of spiritual perfection and unity within the divine. Thus, the alchemist's laboratory, with its mysterious symbols and cryptic manuscripts, becomes a temple of transformation. Here, the crucible symbolizes the soul's trials, the alembic, the distillation of wisdom, and the philosopher's stone, the ultimate enlightenment. Alchemy, then, is the celestial art of transmuting the baseless of earthly existence into the radiant gold of spiritual realization, revealing the luminous path from the shadows of ignorance to the light of divine truth. Let him that is desirous of this knowledge clear his mind from all passions. So one of the key processes which was colored in by that particular introduction is this notion that the allegory of lead into gold is used to denote the purification of the human soul and the human spirit. So what then lies in impurity on our soul that would prevent us accessing this divine truth, this inner philosopher's stone, as it were? And it is alluded to there in the initial chapter, in the initial preface of the alchemy chapter, in the Coiled Serpent, that the passions, the flesh, must be subdued in order to recognize and realize this inner power. So of all these symbolic systems in which the idea of remaking or transmutation of the self has been enshrined, none is so complete as that of the Hermetic philosophers or the spiritual alchemists. By the transmutation of the metals, the alchemists meant the conversion of man from a lower to a higher order of existence, from a natural to a spiritual life. The making of all gold was undoubtedly the compelling motive of those alchemists who were experimenters in primitive chemistry. But the true alchemists have nothing to do with solutions, putrefactions, coagulations, or anything of that kind. They were as far from attempting to produce material gold bricks as the Freemasons are from building with common bricks and mortar. So if you haven't seen the previous video on the Freemasons, again, a lot of the surface level narratives about these very occult and esoteric groups is lost when you start to look deeper underneath the surface. So, the occupations of the Freemasons being great builders and architects is actually analogous to the building of the human body, the human soul. And not too dissimilarly, the alchemists kind of shroud their true passions of what would you say, changing the internal chemistry of the body under this rubric or under this guise of, no, we're just turning lead into gold. We're just experimenting with material. No, the true alchemy, the true chemistry is of the human soul. That is the most important thing. What they wanted was to obtain the pure gold of wisdom from the interior metals represented by man's animal passions. In Hermetic writings, there occurs repeatedly such phrases as, "Our gold is not in any way the gold of the multitude, but it is the living gold. It is the gold with which the wise are enriched, not that which is coined." So they hold this value in much higher esteem of internal wisdom than material wealth, as material wealth is finite and internal wisdom is infinite in that way. All beings contained in their innermost center a precious grain of this gold. One must take this pure spiritual gold. Those who labor with dead materials will obtain nothing that lives. So it's kind of really sad and disheartening to me, because I believe there's so much merit in this idea that in every single human being there is a spark of value. There is a flash or grain of gold, as delineated here in this particular chapter. But most will never do the purification process in which to realize it. I mean, imagine having this, you're carrying around this lump of ore, right? Like a miner. He puts his pickaxe into the sides of the mountain and he produces this ore, this lump of ore. And it's very, very heavy, and there's all these impurities on it and imperfections. But if a man would merely take time to take off the impurities, to sand it and whittle it down, he in himself can realize this unfathomable value that lies within. But most men continue to be ignorant to that fact, or they pack on more impurities. And these impurities are allegories for the things that give us shame in our lives, that make us slaves to our passion. It could be in lust, it could be in pride, it could be in greed. And all of these impurities are just taking us further and further away from recognizing the base metal, that base gold that is within us all. The philosophical alchemists used this only symbolically. The chemists' utensils and vernacular in expounding the truth to hide it from the unworthy, lest they should be giving the holy thing to those who think only of indulging their lustful desires. They taught that alchemy casts off the sensual man, because sensuality suffocates its germ. Really, really powerful imagery there. Therefore, they said, we should first study how to overcome carnal affections. One worthy of the science must be strictly virtuous, leading a holy life pure and unsullied by the sensual pleasures from birth. Alchemy can be fully understood only by those who have entered on and are working the philosophic process. But even a partial understanding will show that the culmination of the secret work is spiritual perfect man. This idea is supported by several clear statements in Hermetic writings. One of the alchemist records, "I gave myself over to wisdom's smelting furnace, as to a fire of purification, till all my vain desires and the tares of earthly lust had burnt away, so that I appeared in spirit as a pure gold." While in other states, I have throughout the whole course of my life kept myself safe and free from sensuality. Still another writes, "I command all my successors to spiritualize their bodies." So really interesting kind of continuity from excerpts of alchemists in these Hermetic writings that basically describe this process of recognizing their inner gold or enlightenment or spiritual attainment by mitigating or transcending their earthly passions, their desires, their sexual reflex, you could say. In regard to the Philosopher's Stone, they remark, "The hidden stone is not sensually apprehended, but only known intellectually, for it in material and external things. Our stone consists of a body, a soul, and a spirit." In other words, the stone denotes a spiritualized man who is consciously and by choice is as little susceptible to passions as a stone or mineral is in its still unawakened consciousness. This interpretation of the stone still elucidates the Hermetic command, "Be ye transmuted from dead stones into living philosophical stones." About the Hermetic elixir of life, one writer states that this potent elixir was naught but highly concentrated energies of man, existing in potent and latency in his productive organism. Alchemists themselves have said, our secret elixir is of a fire-abiding purity, and he who knows how to make it homogeneous with imperfect bodies knows one of the greatest secrets of nature. But whoever misuses this tincture and does not live with an exemplified pure life will lose this benefit. The ethical work of alchemy is as of common life. It is a sublimation. In fact, there is but a single important operation in the work. This consists in sublimation. Even the first step of this process is done through sublimation and purification, and that is the sublimation actually refers to a transmutation of sexual energy may easily be deduced from the following quotations. So here we have more clearly and more practically and palatably what the alchemists are referring to here, or what the interpretation is by the author Van V. Vliet in respects to the dialogue and the discourse that is going on here. And the quotations from the great work is the unification of the spirit and the body. It is a natural and radical operation in which our natures are altered perfectly. First, you must prepare your seed. So pretty specific there. It must be kept pure and be allowed to ripen. Then the sage enjoins us to sow the seed in a field which has been prepared with living fire, a clear, transparent fire, not unlike the sun. No one can remain uncertain as to what is meant by this fire after reading that. Some call it spirit. The field is referred to the earth or body, meaning one's own body. The earth must be weeded of all foreign elements. The body must be purified because you have a good soil for the sublimation of the seed into spiritual power. So all of this is an allegory, very similar to the Adam and Eve story of eating of the forbidden fruit in the garden. And in this way, we are prepping the seed. We are screening the soil of impurities, and impurities in the prospect of attachments to very lower negative emotions, such as the one that I described previously, particularly lust, which kind of strangles the seed. In fact, there was a term, a particular quote in here that said it strangles the germ. So the germ of the seed is strangled when we indulge and entertain lust and pleasure in our life. Furthermore, one is instructed to take a living and indestructible water, which water is called the medium of the soul. This water is the foundation of our art. It is a water mixed in the belly of the earth, and the spirit has mixed itself with it. The sages have described in power and efficiency being that of spiritual blood. I really like this idea of sexual fluid being analogous to spiritual blood. So if one is empty of sexual fluid, one is empty of spiritual blood. It's been talked on by Rudolf Steiner in his book, The Path of the Initiate. One even can't begin to have a discourse and a relationship and a conversation with divine if one is empty of spiritual blood, of sexual fluid. And in that way, it kind of acts as a conduit, an insulator for your CSF and your nervous system to power it up with all those salts and ions and proteins and minerals and vitamins in order to make a connection with God. In fact, they say that spirit is in the fluid, and especially in the fluid of your ventricles, because there sits the yin of the pituitary and the yang of the pineal. So you have the masculine and feminine glands, which are sitting in the CSF fluid, full with electrolytes and proteins and ions, and there's a conduction going on between there that is supposed to be the pinnacle of the Ida and the Pingala, and it marries together in the crown, which gives you access to super states of consciousness. And there's no reason why that area, or there's no, let's say, mistaking or coincidence that that area has been called, you know, the eye of Horus, the seat of the soul, and you know, the third eye and the crown. So there's a lot of continuity with what is being said here. and some of the Vedic vernacular. Remembering that the earth represents the body, these phrases leave little doubt as to what liquid they refer to. None of it may be wasted and therefore deemed necessary to close the well of the mouth of the vial. For the body must drink its own prepared water and become even purer the more it drinks. So a transmutation and sublimation of the sexual energy into, well, the Vedic vernacular would be into Ojas and Tejas and Shakti and all these other processes. You must understand that the bodily substance must be conserved as being that wherein is the life. You must let it be called your object to solve the substance, which the sages have called the highest natural good. It causes the body to rise from spiritual death to life by being dissolved first and then sublimated. In this sublimation our water ascends. In such a natural sublimation of lifting up there is a separation of the pure from the impure. And by such operation the spirit is incorporated with the body and made one with it. Thus the body is made spiritual by its own water. Interesting references here to water, making me think of Dune and Frank Herbert's depiction of... it's interesting, Frank Herbert made some very interesting claims with, Muad'Dib, the Messiah, and cultivation of water, cultivation of spirits, cultivation actually of sexual energy. I'm probably butchering this, but there's a quotation in which he actually refers to this notion that a man, a spiritual warrior, a Messiah becomes weak when he begins to indulge and gratify himself in sensual passions. Again, really interesting continuity of this idea in such narratives. So all of this can be accomplished with our water in its refluent course. That is to say, when reabsorbed by the body, our ultimate and highest secret is by our water to make our body spiritual. He who knows this knows the only way that leads to perfection. All these pronouncements, most of which have been taken from old Hermetic treatises, distinctly show only that man is the true laboratory of the Hermetic art. So again, it's not an external laboratory, it's an internal lab that we must enter into possession into. And that the genuine alchemists' real objective was the perfection of man, but also that the teachings of the alchemists, the process of transmutation of the sex force, was of primary importance, as it always must be whenever the spiritual regeneration is the aim. So another really fascinating excerpt from the Coiled Serpent. I'm interested to see how this is hitting and landing with you, gentlemen. Are these theories, are these facts? You can let me know. Speak soon.